Okay, so let's talk about the concept of soloing. Now, soloing is basically the part of the song where you get to express yourself through your instrument. And a lot of times, musicians will choose certain phrases, certain runs, certain calling cards in their solos to express themselves. A lot of musicians, you can tell who's soloing by the kind of licks and the phrases and the vocabulary that they use. So what we're going to do, first of all, let's talk about the solo section. The solo section of this tune is right after we come out of the last so you have everything to God in prayer. And as soon as we hit this part here, that's where we're in the solo section. So here we have about 32 bars to express ourselves. Now, when I started soloing, I really didn't know what to do, really, until I started learning scales and then learning patterns to play along with those scales. So let's talk about that. Now, the first key to soloing is that you have to know what chord you're playing while you're soloing, because the chord is going to tell you what scale to use along with that and where you're going to get your ideas from. So for this D flat major 9 chord, let's talk about that scale. That scale is, and you can write it down, D flat, E, F, G flat, A flat, B flat, C, and then D flat. There's one small change we're going to make there. Because of the type of chord this is, and because of the fact that it's a borrowed chord, because we're in the key of F, we're going to take one note in that scale and raise it a half step. D flat, E, F. We're going to take this G flat and raise it to a G. And the reason why is because in the key of F, since we're using this in the key of F, we actually want this to be a G and not a G flat. There's some other theory behind that, but for right now, if you listen to it, sounds off. When you use the G, and that's a better way to show it. Let me play it against both chords. Now with the G flat, you can already hear that it's dissonant or it's clashing. So we're going to play the D flat scale and we're going to raise this note. We call this a Lydian scale. And Lydian basically means that we raise the fourth note of that scale a half step. That's the Lydian scale. So we have D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, and D flat. That's going to be the scale that we use for our D flat major 9 chord. For our F major 9 chord, we're going to use the F scale, which we already learned. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, and F. And also with this scale, you can do the same thing. You can raise the fourth note of the scale a half step, and it'll become the F Lydian scale. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. It just gives extra color. Notice that B makes it sound jazzier. We can play the B flat or we can play the B, depending of color we want. Alright, so those are the two scale choices. Now let me show you some patterns that you can use to practice those scales and to start achieving licks from those scales. From the D flat scale, I'm going to play the chord with my left hand. You can take that scale and you can run it from the first note back to the first note or octave higher. And then you can try to make up patterns within that that start to sound musical. Alright. You can run this scale to the fifth note of scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the same thing with the F scale. You can run the scale in its entirety. Or you can run it to the fifth. And we can also try to run the scale with this B. Sounds a little exotic, but that's the point of the B. Alright, so let me put on the track and let's try to do a couple examples with that in mind. So first I'm going to just run the D flat scale to the fifth, F scale to the fifth. Now the entire scale. Try to give you some patterns just dealing with the scale tones in that manner. So basically what I'm doing there is, for the D flat major chord, I'm just using A flat, G, and E flat. For the F chord, I'm using F, E, C. Alright, so that's one pattern. Running it to the fifth is another pattern. Running it from the fifth down to the root. It's a little bit elementary, but you can use it depending on what the pattern is that you want to do. You can mix the patterns up.